We got some big wrestling news stories in this video, timestamps down below. First, we're going to talk about AEW All Out. CM Punk returned to AEW face-to-face with Jon Moxley. Obviously, they are going to crown the Undisputed World Championship. Now, where does that leave Bryan Danielson for AEW All Out? And a lot of people have been wondering what would be happening. AEW announced a 2 out of 3 falls match between Bryan Danielson and Daniel Garcia for next week's AEW Dynamite. Well, it actually appears that AEW's plan is for Chris Jericho to take on Bryan Danielson, which was the first plan that Dave Meltzer heard. He recently spoke about this on Wrestling Observer Radio. And, you know, honestly, this is a very interesting idea because I feel like Chris Jericho and Bryan Danielson should both be working with guys who are relatively younger, who are going to help push the future of this company going forward. That's just my personal take on it. I'm sure it'll be a fun match. I'm sure there's going to be some great storytelling there. And quite honestly, I like the idea of Garcia and Bryan Danielson happening, but a 2 out of 3 falls match for me just feels a little bit more important, to be placed on a pay-per-view versus an AEW Dynamite. And of course, with AEW, they're always trying to stack their television shows, but with so many people not having TV time, I just prefer to see that match on the pay-per-view over Chris Jericho and Bryan Danielson. Again, I'm not mad about Bryan Danielson versus Jericho. I think he'll be fine, but I just feel like it would be more advantageous for Daniel Garcia to have that big singles match on a pay-per-view. Now, AEW All Out is probably going to be a massive pay-per-view for the company. I feel like every AEW All Out has done a significant amount of greatness for the company, always had some big returns, always had some sort of big debut, always had some big moments. I feel like All Out has kind of been AEW's biggest pay-per-view, sometimes even more than Double or Nothing. So I'm interested to see what happens here. I don't know exactly what to expect, but we'll kind of see how AEW builds towards Labor Day weekend. Speaking of AEW, guys, Lana could very well be on her way to AEW. We obviously had that video package for AEW, and it's not very often where Miro makes any sort of references to his wife, but basically Julia Hart showed up at the end of his promo, and she put her hand on Miro's face, and basically Miro responded with, "There's only one woman who could touch the Redeemer, and you are not her." Now, there have been rumors for a while that CJ Perry was going to actually come into AEW as the manager for Miro, and then that would begin a very big push for Miro. Obviously, with AEW kind of building this Miro versus, House of Black, Malachi Black feud, I think CJ Perry being there to, stop Julia Hart from getting involved could be a really good thing for storylines purposes. And I think Lana was good in WWE, man. Honestly, I know a lot of people weren't a big fan of her wrestling skills. I don't think she was that bad as a wrestler. But most importantly, she was really good in that manager role. I feel like it definitely helped out Rusev. And I feel like AEW kind of dropped the ball with Miro. And unfortunately, I can't change my mind on that. I think, Miro is a world championship kind of guy. And when he went from the video game gimmick to the Redeemer, I was excited, and then it's just like they kind of start and stop, and they don't really build anything up, no momentum. Now we're starting to see some momentum with Miro. I think what they really need to do is just fully commit to Miro, bring in CJ Perry at his side, and allow them to do some great things in this company. Especially with House of Black, it's unfortunate because House of Black, I don't feel like their gimmick should be defined by wins and losses either. I think they're more character centric. So having Miro beat Malachi Black or whatever it may be, I think that's totally fine. I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it really hurts Malachi Black. But if that does happen, I want to see AEW continue to push Miro upwards. The fact that he's not holding a championship belt right now, the fact that he's not competing for a world championship belt right now, it just tells me that the TNT championship did not do anything for Miro. And that is a very unfortunate thing because that TNT championship in the beginning of AEW was always used as a way to feel important. And I don't necessarily think that's been the case as of late. However, Lana, Miro, I don't know what they're going to call her. They'll probably just call her CJ Perry. But I think it's just the perfect pairing. It makes sense. There's real chemistry there. Obviously, they are together in real life. And Miro bringing her in just kind of enhances the act, and that is something I am looking forward to a lot. I also want to point out, too, CJ Perry was supposed to compete for AOP's wrestling promotion, and that has gone bye-bye. So she was supposed to be in the women's title match for that pay-per-view, and they haven't done anything. So we'll see kind of how that goes. Bray Wyatt, guys, we've been talking about a lot of Bray Wyatt, and I thought this was a really, really interesting story because Slice Wrestling basically came out with an article today, a new report that indicated that WWE and Bray Wyatt are finalizing a deal for his return. There's going to be some creative freedom involved within this deal. WWE championship plans are involved in this deal. And basically the idea is that Triple H is going to make Bray Wyatt a top guy again. And, you know, Vince McMahon kind of dropped the ball with Bray. I feel like Triple H will be able to pick that ball up and get it going again, which is fantastic. I know yesterday Fightful Select had also dropped a report kind of talking about how they were interested in bringing him back, and people in the company believe he would be coming back. There hasn't been a follow-up to that story just yet, but Slice dropped the report today that indicates they are close to finalizing a deal. So with Bray Wyatt actually coming back to WWE, this is fantastic news for WWE. This is a big win for WWE. And, you know, I think a lot of times what people need to realize is AEW is still a fantastic option, but not for every wrestler. And I think if you're a wrestler who is watching what AEW does, it might be kind of annoying to see the start and stop momentum. I think it might be a little bit annoying to see that there's not as big of a focus on characters as there is on pro wrestling. So if you're a wrestler who's really character dominant, you're probably going to want to be in WWE. And I think Triple H is trying to balance out the both, right? He wants to give you that wrestling feel, the more, you know, more attention to the wrestling aspect of it, but he also wants to stick around with the characters and the intellectual properties because that's what WWE, that's one of the reasons why WWE is so successful. So I think this is a great move for Bray Wyatt. I think this is a great move for Triple H, and I'm going to keep reminding you guys, Triple H has to freshen up the product, but I do not want to see WWE have an incredibly bloated roster. Obviously, they have more TV time than AEW, but we saw what happened to NXT when it had a bloated roster. It was very annoying, and I really hope Triple H kind of steers away from that. I understand making a couple returns, maybe a couple new signings, but you got to make sure you freshen up the product. Also, I feel like SmackDown is a little bit light in terms of roster size compared to Raw. So definitely, you know, I would expect Bray Wyatt on SmackDown. I also expect WWE to make a couple more key returns or signings for SmackDown, maybe even NXT call-ups, just because SmackDown's roster is a little bit lighter than Raw's. But ultimately, this is great news. If you're a Bray Wyatt fan, you should definitely be excited about this. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out all the links in the description, Discord, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff in the description down below. And I will see you guys next time.